people didn't like that you were making it, it seemed
No,
like.
yeah, there was a lot of opposition to it. I think if you ever hit on that subject matter, you're going to get people going.
Facts, otherwise, hey, well, I'm just hiding my head in the sand. It's not so much that, it's just not magnifying the negative. And like I talk about in the book, that I am a masterpiece.
Mel Gibson has never been the kind of Hollywood figure who stays quiet when faith is involved. Throughout his career, he has carried a reputation for taking risks, enduring criticism, and standing by beliefs that many in the entertainment world would rather avoid discussing publicly. Unlike celebrities who casually reference spirituality for image or branding, Gibson's connection to faith has always appeared intense, personal, and deeply tied to suffering. Years ago, when he decided to create The Passion of the Christ, major studios reportedly wanted nothing to do with the project. The idea of a brutal, emotionally raw film centered entirely on the final hours of Jesus Christ seemed commercially dangerous and culturally divisive. Instead of abandoning the idea, Gibson invested around $30 million of his own money into making the film. That decision nearly destroyed his standing in Hollywood, but for him, it represented something far beyond business. It reflected a personal conviction formed during some of the darkest periods of his life, when fame, wealth, and public recognition failed to bring him peace. Gibson has often spoken about struggling with inner conflict, addiction, and emotional collapse, and he credits faith with helping him survive those moments. Because of that history, many people view his words about religion differently than they would those of ordinary celebrities. His beliefs appear rooted in pain, sacrifice, and personal struggle rather than comfort or public approval. That background is essential for understanding why his recent criticism of modern celebrity ministries has created such a powerful reaction. Gibson did not launch into direct personal attacks or sensational accusations. Instead, he spoke about a broader pattern within modern Christianity, describing a version of faith that becomes packaged like entertainment and sold to audiences. Seeking comfort rather than truth, he criticized ministries that appear more focused on maintaining loyalty, positivity, and financial growth than challenging people spiritually. Although he avoided explicitly naming anyone, many listeners immediately connected his remarks to Joel Osteen, one of the most recognizable and wealthy pastors in the United States. The contrast between the two men could hardly be sharper. Gibson's public image is built around sacrifice, controversy, and endurance through hardship, while Osteen's ministry projects optimism, success, prosperity, and polished reassurance. For millions of people, the clash between those two visions of faith has become symbolic of a much larger debate inside modern religion itself. Joel Osteen's rise to influence is extraordinary by any standard. As the leader of Lakewood Church in Houston, he oversees one of the largest congregations in the world. The church operates out of a massive former NBA arena that can hold more than 16,000 people, while weekly attendance and global broadcasts expand his reach to millions across more than 100 countries. Osteen's books consistently dominate bestseller lists. His sermons flood television and social media, and his carefully maintained image has transformed him into more than a pastor. He functions as a motivational figure, media personality, and global brand all at once. His signature smile, calm speaking style, designer suits, and uplifting messages have become instantly recognizable. To supporters, he represents hope, positivity, and encouragement during difficult times. His sermons rarely focus on judgment, fear, or condemnation. Instead, they emphasize overcoming obstacles, believing in yourself, and trusting that God wants people to live abundant lives. Yet that message has also generated growing criticism. Osteen's ministry exists within the controversial framework often referred to as the prosperity gospel, the belief that strong faith and positive thinking can lead directly to material blessings, financial success, health, and personal advancement. For millions struggling with uncertainty, poverty, or emotional pain, this message feels empowering and hopeful. It offers the possibility that faith can tangibly improve everyday life. However, Many theologians and religious scholars argue that prosperity theology fundamentally conflicts with core Christian teachings about sacrifice, humility, and suffering. Biblical passages warning against the dangers of wealth create a serious tension with ministries built around luxury and enormous financial success. Critics question whether a gospel centered so heavily on prosperity risks transforming spirituality into a transaction where faith becomes a pathway to material gain. These concerns intensify when examining the immense wealth connected to Osteen's ministry. Reports over the years have estimated his personal fortune at more than $100 million, supported by book deals, speaking engagements, television rights, and media ventures. He and his family reportedly live in a 17,000-square-foot mansion worth millions of dollars. Supporters argue that much of his wealth comes from private business activities rather than direct church donations, and they point out that successful authors, speakers, and media personalities naturally earn substantial incomes. Critics, however, see the scale of luxury surrounding the ministry as deeply unsettling, especially when compared to the struggles faced by many followers. Questions about financial transparency, charitable giving, and accountability have followed Osteen for years. Reports suggesting that only a small percentage of church revenue goes toward charitable causes have fueled accusations that the ministry prioritizes growth and image over direct service to vulnerable communities. The controversy surrounding Hurricane Harvey became one of the defining moments shaping public perception of Osteen's ministry. In August 2017, catastrophic flooding devastated Houston after the storm dumped historic amounts of rain across the city. Tens of thousands of people were displaced almost immediately, emergency shelters became overwhelmed, and countless families desperately searched for safe places to stay. In the middle of this crisis stood Lakewood Church, occupying a massive facility with enormous capacity, kitchens, gathering areas, and infrastructure capable of housing large numbers of people. Many residents expected the church to open its doors immediately as a refuge. Instead, social media posts from the church initially suggested the building was inaccessible because of flooding concerns. Soon afterward, videos and eyewitness accounts circulated online appearing to show the facility largely unaffected. Public anger exploded across social media platforms as critics accused the church of hesitating to help while the city suffered. Eventually, Lakewood Church did open its doors and reportedly sheltered thousands of displaced residents while contributing significant funds toward relief and rebuilding efforts. Defenders argued that safety concerns and logistical confusion explained the delay, while supporters highlighted the substantial aid eventually provided. However, for many people, the damage to the ministry's image had already occurred. The optics proved devastating. The sight of one of America's richest and most influential churches appearing reluctant to act during a humanitarian disaster reinforced long-standing concerns about the relationship between wealth, image, and authentic compassion within celebrity ministries. The situation became symbolic of a larger fear that some modern religious institutions prioritize branding and public relations over sacrificial service. It was against this backdrop that Mel Gibson's criticism gained enormous traction. During a media appearance promoting his film Flight Risk, Gibson unexpectedly shifted the conversation toward modern religion. He spoke about ministries that treat faith like a product designed for consumption, where audiences are offered comfort, emotional reassurance, and motivational experiences instead of difficult truths. He described spiritual leaders who resemble performers more than shepherds, cultivating loyal audiences while avoiding the painful realities central to many religious traditions. Although he never explicitly named Osteen, the parallels were impossible for most listeners to ignore. Gibson's comments appeared aimed directly at prosperity-driven ministries, where financial success and personal branding seem inseparable from spiritual authority. The reaction was immediate and deeply divided. Many people who had long felt uncomfortable with celebrity pastors celebrated Gibson for saying publicly what they believed few influential figures were willing to address. To them, his criticism carried credibility precisely because his own faith journey involved suffering, rejection, and sacrifice rather than wealth and comfort. Others argued that Gibson himself remains a controversial figure with a troubled history, making him an imperfect messenger for moral criticism. His past scandals, public outbursts, and damaged reputation were quickly brought back into public discussion. Yet even critics of Gibson acknowledged that the broader questions he raised about accountability and authenticity within modern ministries could not easily be dismissed. Interestingly, Joel Osteen largely chose silence in response to the controversy. His public appearances and social media activity continued with familiar messages of encouragement and positivity while avoiding direct engagement with Gibson's remarks. Supporters viewed this restraint as wise and dignified, arguing that responding publicly would only intensify division and hostility. Critics, however, interpreted the silence differently. To them, it symbolized a refusal to address serious concerns about wealth, accountability, and the nature of spiritual leadership. An age where public figures are expected to answer difficult questions directly, silence itself became part of the controversy. Beneath the headlines and celebrity conflict lies a deeper issue affecting modern religious culture worldwide. The rise of celebrity pastors has transformed spirituality into something increasingly intertwined with branding, media influence, and massive financial structures. Ministries today often function like corporations, complete with production teams, marketing departments, publishing divisions, merchandise, and global broadcasting networks. This transformation has created unprecedented influence for religious leaders, but has also generated new ethical concerns. When pastors become celebrities, how should accountability function? What responsibilities accompany spiritual authority over millions of people? How should faith communities respond when ministries accumulate enormous wealth while preaching messages rooted in compassion and humility? The prosperity gospel sits at the center of these debates because it speaks directly to universal human desires. People facing uncertainty naturally long for hope, stability, and evidence that their suffering has meaning. Messages promising that faith can produce visible blessings feel emotionally powerful, especially during difficult times. Osteen's enormous popularity demonstrates how deeply this message resonates with audiences searching for encouragement. Many followers genuinely feel helped, motivated, and emotionally strengthened by his teachings. That reality complicates simplistic criticism. The emotional comfort and optimism provided by ministries like Lakewood are undeniably real for countless people. At the same time, critics argue that prosperity theology struggles to address life's harshest realities. If financial success is interpreted as evidence of faithfulness, what does that imply about people who remain poor despite sincere belief? How does the doctrine explain illness, tragedy, injustice, or loss experienced by devoted followers? These questions expose the limitations of a spiritual framework built heavily around positivity and visible success. Human suffering cannot always be solved through optimism alone, and many theologians argue that authentic faith requires confronting pain honestly rather than avoiding it. The public conflict involving Mel Gibson and Joel Osteen therefore represents far more than celebrity drama. It reflects a growing cultural struggle over what spiritual leadership should mean in a media-driven world where image often shapes perception more powerfully than actions. Modern audiences are increasingly skeptical of institutions that appear wealthy, polished, and inaccessible while preaching compassion and humility. People want transparency, authenticity, and evidence that leaders genuinely live according to the values they promote publicly. The demand for accountability is no longer confined to politics or business. Religious institutions face the same scrutiny. Ultimately, the conversation sparked by Gibson's criticism forces difficult but necessary questions. Can enormous wealth coexist comfortably with spiritual leadership rooted in sacrifice and service? Does celebrity status inevitably distort religious authority? How should ministries balance inspiration with accountability? And perhaps, most importantly, what kind of faith are people truly seeking in an age dominated by spectacle, branding, and constant media exposure? Neither Gibson nor Osteen alone can answer those questions. But their conflict has exposed a tension that millions of people already sensed beneath the surface. It is a tension between faith as transformation and faith as comfort, between sacrifice and success, between spiritual truth and public image. As this debate continues, the future of modern religious leadership may depend on how honestly those contradictions are confronted.